Hello, I'm Rebecca of Pocketful of Poseys. Today's video is another pattern test for Kenna of Kenna Sews. It is an 1890s bodice. Now, this bodice, though they think that it was probably made first in the 1890s, it was redone in the early 1900s. I'm going to be making the 1890s version of this bodice. This bodice was taken from an extant garment, and so it is just one size, and so I will be doing a few things to modify it to fit me, and I will take you all along as I do that and share with you my process of making this 1890s bodice. So without further ado, let's get to it. Here we go. As with every PDF pattern, I taped it together and cut it out. Hercules was very helpful, as always. Mock-up time! So, looking at this pattern, the bust is 50 or 48 inches. The waist is 43 inches. The waist tape closes at 41. Shoulders 14 inches. Waist length 6.5 to 7 inches. Kind of short-waisted. Sleeve inseam is 15 inches. Neck 18 inches. Arm side 21.5 inches. So I guess there are two options for bust size because it was altered. Originally it was 2 inches larger in the bust. The seam allowances are 7/8 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is just reduce the seam allowance because, so the waist is 43 inches. So I will need another 6 to 7 inches depending on which corset I use. Yeah, so first thing, because I'm not going to do math, I'm just going to reduce the seam allowances and see where that gets me. My mock-up was too big with every seam allowance reduced, as I knew it would be. I pinched out the excess where it looked the best for me and my body. This led to a much better fit. Some seams have the original 7/8 seam allowance and some have a 1/4 inch. The center front to mid-front seam is 5/8 of an inch. I tapered the seam allowance under the arms from 7/8 at the top to a 1/4 inch at the waist, so my arm size weren't too big. My outer fabrics are taffeta, and I used a mix of lining fabrics from my stash. I lengthened the back and side backs by 1 inch as well. I intended to lengthen all of the pieces by 1 inch, but forgot to do the rest, so it's a bit short-waisted. Okay, all of my pieces are cut out, except for the bodice lining pieces. I still need to do that. And on that subject, I was thinking, could I just use my mock-up as my lining? I mean, it's all put together, so I wouldn't be putting the bodice together as instructed by the pattern. So then it really wouldn't be a good pattern test. So no, I do need to do it all separately. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be flat lined. All the bodice pieces are supposed to be flat lined. But I did have a brief moment of, couldn't I just use this instead and kind of bag line it? Just I'm tired of cutting. Cutting is the thing in sewing. I know nobody likes cutting. Cutting is the thing that tends to hurt my back the most because my cutting table, such as it is just desk height. It's not counter height. So when I'm cutting, I have to bend over, or I have to cut sitting down. And sitting down is not the best way to cut either. I do cut sitting down as much as I can, but sometimes I just need to stand up, and that means I have to kind of bend over, and then that hurts my back, and so I end up feeling sore after cutting, which is never fun. So let me cut out all of my bodice pieces in my lining material. My lining material is just a black cotton. It's it might be, it's fairly hefty. It's not real thick, but it has some heft to it. It's not very thin. Because I was looking to see if I had any other fabric that I could use for lining, and I don't really have anything that goes, not with this. This doesn't go with anything that goes with my outer fabric, which is a green taffeta. And I used some green, I don't even know what it was. I had a piece of it left. I used that for the sleeve lining, and it's thin. It's a very silky material. It's like a lame. It feels like a lame or something. I don't know what it is. But it was green and it was slippery, which I thought would be good for the sleeve lining, but I don't have enough of that to cut out all of the bodice pieces. So I have that black fabric, and that's about it. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. The bodice lining has two darts. One is sewn first, and then the second dart is sewn together with the outer fabric. The center front contrast is sewn to the mid-front outer piece, matching the marks. I thread marked my darts before interlining the front and front lining pieces. All of the bodice pieces are interlined. Next, the dart is sewn through both layers. For the boning at the left center front edge, I had ordered some covered boning, but it was delayed, so I set about making a boning channel. Twill tape wasn't quite wide enough, so I made one out of a scrap of taffeta. I think I put it on incorrectly, or at least I should have folded the raw edge under, but it's fine because I used hook and eye tape for the closure and it covers that raw edge. Hook and eye tape was much faster than sewing that many hooks and eyes on individually. I wish I had had black, but it's not much of an issue. I sewed the tape down to the lining, being careful not to go through to the outside. I sewed it down with a whip stitch on both sides of the tape. To line my back and side back pieces, I used the green taffeta because I ran out of the black cotton. I sewed my center backs. The tail of the center back and side backs have weights. I didn't have any weights, so I sewed in a metal button on each tail. They are heavy enough to keep the tails from flying up. Next, the side backs are attached to the center backs. I folded up the seam allowance on the center back tails and whip stitched it down. Then the side pieces are sewn on. My covered boning arrived, so I sewed it in at the center back. I'm pretty sure I was supposed to add boning on each side of the center back seam, but I just did one in the middle. I sewed it in by hand. It's messy, but I was running behind on this pattern test. I sewed the rest of the boning in, some by hand, some on the machine. Why? Who knows? The side back tails are lined separately. I used twill tape to bind the hem edge. That's what I had on hand, and it worked out well. I sewed it on with as narrow a seam allowance as I could since the bodice is short-waisted. As I was whip stitching the binding to the lining, we lost power due to bad storms. My phone flashlight wasn't enough light, so I used one of our emergency hurricane lights. Because of losing power, I did a lot more hand sewing on this bodice than I thought I would. The collar was next. I basted the lace layer to the taffeta before sewing that to the lining layer, trimming, clipping the corners and curved edges, and flipping it out. The collar is sewn to the neckline of the bodice right sides together, and the lining is folded under and whip stitched to the lining of the bodice on the inside. Okay, so bodice is pretty much all put together. Closures are done, hemming's done. Well, the binding is done on the hemline, and all I have left to do now is the sleeves and the jabot collar. I think that's how you use it. I'm not sure, but anyway. All I have left to do is that, and I'm going to go ahead and get started on the sleeves now that we have power again, of course. So I'm going to get that done. And oh, you may be wondering about this. Well, last night I was sitting in my recliner, minding my own business, watching Fallout, and Kit Kat was over to my right, and suddenly, with no warning, she took a flying leap up onto the recliner and across my face. So yeah, she got me. She got me. And so yeah, I'm hoping it's, I mean, it wasn't super big or anything. Hoping I'll be able to cover it up with makeup for photos when I finish this bodice. So fingers crossed. Let's get these sleeves done. I am going to be using the original sleeves. The pattern has the option of 2 different types of sleeves. One likely from the original bodice, which was made in the early 1890s, and then it was altered later in the early 1900s to make it more suitable for that time period. So I'm going to be making the earlier sleeves. They are poofier, so that should be fun. So I'm going to be following those directions, and yeah, woohoo. Sleeves. The lower sleeve outers are sewn onto the lining, and then the lining pieces are sewn together. The convex side of the upper sleeve pieces are sewn together next, and then lines of gathering stitches are added for ruching. Then the concave seam is sewn. The upper sleeves are then sewn to the lining layer that has the lower outer sleeve. The bottom edge of the upper sleeve is folded under and top stitched. Before I top stitched the upper sleeves to the lower sleeves, I took the gathering thread ends and put them through to the inside and tied them off. I should have done that before assembling the sleeves, but I forgot, and it is fine. My lining and upper sleeves did not match up. It may have been an error on my part, combined with the wibbly fabric used for the sleeve lining, but I let Kenna know that mine didn't match up, just in case it was with the pattern, but I think it was really my fault. So to solve this problem, I chopped the upper lining of the sleeve off. So my upper sleeves are not lined. My final step for the sleeves before inserting them and gathering to fit was to turn up a narrow hem at the wrists and whip stitch it down. On to the jabot. It has gathering guides and is sewn onto the right center front. It is just sewn on with a basting stitch. To the reveal! I really love these poofy sleeves. Despite some hiccups along the way, I'm very happy with the results of this pattern test. If I were to make this pattern again, I would definitely lengthen it since it's short-waisted, but other than that, I like the fit and the silhouette. I think I might take in the sleeves a little bit on the lower sleeves because they're a little too big. I think Anne Shirley would be very pleased with these puffed sleeves. What are your thoughts on 1890s fashion? Let me know in the comments. Big thanks to my monthly supporters. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't, and if you'd like to be notified whenever I upload, you can hit that little bell icon. To support the channel further, I have a Ko-fi account, and that is linked down below. Be sure to check out all of Kenna's links down below and the link to the pattern when it's available, and I will see you again on our next sewing adventure. Bye!